G'day! I'm out here on Banks Peninsula again. It's just an amazing location and there's so many neat photo opportunities that you can find out here. Today I've got a bit of a mission in mind. I'm going to run an experiment. You often hear in photography about golden hour. What I want to test is what happens across the course of golden hour. Is one part a bit better than the rest? Let's see what the light does across the course of that hour and also after sunset going into blue hour. So we've got about 2 hours until sunset. I'm going to see if I can find something that's worth setting up a tripod for, and we'll run this experiment. Let's go. Well, this cabin works, I think. I've been having a bit of a walk back and forward to see how I can compose a shot here and frame it up. The power pylons definitely make it a little bit tricky, and I thought at first I'd be able to get them in as well, but no luck so far. So I'm going for a pretty tight composition. We have got a bit of cloud setting in as well, which isn't necessarily great for seeing the light that we're going to get from golden hour. But we'll give it a go and we'll see what we get. And yeah, let's check in again in a few minutes. So I thought I'd take a closer look at this hut that I'm photographing, and it turns out there's actually quite a neat story about this thing. This hut was built as a kit set in the UK, and it was designed to go to Antarctica. It actually went on Captain Robert Falcon Scott's 1910 expedition, the famous one where he was beaten to the South Pole and didn't make it back alive. This hut was designed to be used by the expedition's meteorologist, who was going to climb up onto the roof, and hence the railings up there, and take meteorological readings in Antarctica. The weird thing is the meteorologist never made it onto the ship. He actually stayed behind in the UK, and so the hut was never used. It came back to New Zealand after the expedition, still wrapped in the original packaging, and they actually made it up here, used it as a private house for a little while, and then after the Christchurch earthquakes in 2010 it was found, and then moved out here to Banks Peninsula to be a conservation piece. So quite an interesting wee story about this thing, I thought. So this is the part of landscape photography I think I struggle with the most, and that's actually just being able to wait and have some patience. So I've got everything done I need to. I've been taking photos every 10-15 minutes. I've got all my settings dialed in, and now just comes the waiting. Here's the problem, we've got a whole bunch of cloud up there and it's blocking out the sun. I can't get any of that beautiful golden light that I was coming here for. That's okay, we're going to stick with the plan, photographing this hut over the next couple of hours and see how we go. To be honest, normally cloud is actually a help in landscape photography because it helps diffuse some of the light. It makes it less harsh and you don't get those shadows that can often lead to an image that doesn't look particularly interesting. I'm going to stick to the plan, we'll keep on shooting and we'll sort of see how these files look back on the computer as we compare them over the hour. So we've now got about 20 minutes or so until sunset, and yeah, the cloud is still out here. But the thing I've definitely learned already is just the value in staying in a place and just seeing what happens. There's quite a variety of shots I've already got, and it just gives you, I guess, more to pick from. I thought having a few people up on top of the hut definitely added to the image, and honestly, you can't sort of make that stuff happen, I guess, unless you've got a crowd who are willing to travel around with you and pose in your images. Well, I'm definitely noticing a change in the light now. We've got about 50 minutes or so until sunset, and with the cloud cover out here, it's getting quite dark. I'll walk you through what I'm doing. So I've got my aperture set to f11, and the reason I'm doing that, it's quite a small aperture, it's not letting in much light, but what I'm wanting to do is I want as much of the scene in focus as possible. I want the grass in the foreground, the hut, and then also the hill in the background to be as sharp as possible in one exposure. Now you can do things like focus stacking, which is where you take a bunch of images and you combine the sharpest parts of each of them, focusing on different parts of the image as you go through the different shots. The problem is I'm taking quite a few photos here and I just don't have time to go and do that in Photoshop when I'm back home. I've also got my shutter speed set to 1/60th of a second, which is actually quite fast for a relatively low light scenario. The reason I'm doing that is that the grass in the foreground is moving, there's a little bit of wind, and I don't want to get any of that movement and blur in the grass. If you have a really slow shutter speed, that movement can look quite nice and you can end up with a nice sort of blurred effect. But if you only have a little bit of movement, it can just look like the grass is out of focus and it's not particularly attractive. Well, there's the last of our sunset. Pity it didn't make it into the image, but that's okay. Again, I'm resisting that temptation to change my framing or move my tripod. I told myself I was going to commit to taking photos of this hut. I was going to pick a single composition and just shoot that throughout the entire evening. So we'll stick with that plan, but yeah, that's about as best as we got for our golden hour. Okay, well we're well into blue hour now. I'm taking exposures that are 20 seconds long, and one of the tips I thought I'd share that it's quite well known, but it helped me a lot when I started landscape photography where I was taking long exposures at night, and that's to use a 2-second self-timer on the camera to just introduce a bit of a delay after you touch the shutter button before it takes the photo. Even with a really good tripod and a camera with built-in image stabilization and a lens with image stabilization, when you touch the camera, if you're doing an exposure this long, you do introduce some camera shake that will show up in the image. So by allowing the camera 2 seconds to just settle down and that shake to dissipate, it means you're giving yourself the best chance of getting a sharp image. So continuing the topic of things I could have photographed but didn't, there's actually a big storm that's rolled in over Christchurch City, and we're looking out over that now with lightning flashes and some incredible stuff out there. Okay, well it's about 45 minutes after sunset. The sunlight is almost all gone, but this lightning storm is actually starting to get a little bit closer. So in the interests of not getting struck by lightning while standing out on this hill, I'm going to pack up and head home. It's been a really interesting evening, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I learn from these images back at home. Well, I've imported all of the files, there were quite a few of them, and looking through them all, I've definitely noticed a couple of patterns. First of all, I definitely didn't get the conditions that I was looking for on the day, and the experiment I was hoping to run didn't really work. But I did learn that there's some value in observing a scene over a longer period of time. It's something I'm shocking at when it comes to landscape photography, of just taking my shot and getting out of there. But by just waiting and observing, you can start to see things that are changing, and it just gives you a few more options to capture the kind of image that you might have been setting out to create. Another trick that definitely came in handy there was looking at images where the colours weren't particularly interesting, particularly when I had a lot of cloud cover. But if you've got interesting texture in the image still, converting that into black and white can yield quite good results. You're preserving all of that interesting texture and tonality and dynamic range, but you're not taking the muted and muddy colours that didn't really look that great. And probably the last thing I learned looking at those shots was the importance of composition. It's so easy when you head out somewhere and set up a tripod at first to think, oh look, that looks good enough, particularly if you're running an experiment like that for a long period of time. And then 15 to 30 minutes in, you'll be looking at what you'd composed originally and you'll be thinking, what on earth was I thinking? And if only I moved the camera and set something else up, it's going to look a lot better. But if you are really wanting to compare images across the passing of time and really see what difference changing light and changing weather has on a very specific scene, I guess like me, you're probably going to have to prepare to be a little bit self-disciplined and stick to just shooting that one scene for a bit of time. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing me make a fool of myself out in the field there and complain about the conditions. If you'd like to watch something a bit more gear focused, check out this recent video I posted talking about the importance of picking a camera system when you're buying camera gear and why I chose the Sony system for my own photography. See you in the next one.